what is the actual right, insider? How narcissists actually work. Authorized account insider. Okay, insider is some sort of news thing, right? I think they do. They maybe have like a series of these types of things. Where I think they. I'm not for sure, but they might have brought on a gangster or something.
My name is Jacob Skidmore. I am known online as the Nameless Narcissist, and I have been professionally diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. This is everything that I'm authorized to tell you.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of want to watch this one because I've done a lot of type of almost speculation on this, but I think a lot of times narcissist is maybe used in a colloquial sense that isn't necessarily clinical. So, why not?
Everybody thinks that they know a narcissist. I personally have never met somebody diagnosed in real life other than myself, and I've never met somebody that I even suspected was one. The issue with how people use the term narcissist is that it's always to pathologize somebody's behavior because their behavior has hurt me in some way. I don't like hurting people for hurting's sake. Narcissistic personality disorder specifically is characterized by a grandiosity, a lack of reciprocal relationships, lack of empathy, grandiosity.
Lack of reciprocal relation. I feel like that's kind of something that's a lot of times determined by environment to some extent. I'm not sure.
By the way, meaning basically I think I'm better than everybody else, in short. It's like impossible.
Yeah, okay. That feels kind of vague, because I think most people think, well, at least in the ways that matter, they're, smarter. Obviously, given the information I have, I obviously believe that my opinion is the correct one to have. Why wouldn't I? It's based upon the information I have. But I'm not for sure if there would be maybe some more extreme variant to it.
Imposter syndrome on steroids. Since everything I do does go through this lens of what is this going to make people think about me? How can I kind of modify how I'm presenting in order to get that reaction that I need?
Like the OG clavicular.
We have a flawed way of viewing and interacting with the world. It comes with like a lot of cognitive distortions and defense mechanisms of varying kind of presentations. In the DSM-5, there's 9 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, but you only need 5 to actually be diagnosed. The issue with that is kind of that you have I think it's like 200 types of narcissists, in quotes, that you can encounter due to how the diagnostic criteria kind of present. But that's mainly because the current diagnostic criteria is very focused on external behaviors that clinicians can identify in an office. I think the biggest difference between self-confidence and narcissism is where self-love comes into it. Because a lot of people want to view narcissism through this lens of too much self-love. You love yourself too much. You can only have empathy for yourself. There is no self-love. There is no empathy for yourself when it comes to pathological narcissism. It's just grandiosity. I hate myself.
So it's not like a type of maybe feeling more of an intellectually, I'm better. Yeah, I don't know. That makes kind of sense a little bit.
But I'm better than everybody else. Could be like the tagline of it. Genuine self-confidence comes from a place of self-compassion. So self-love, I can say very confidently, there's never been a time in my life that I felt like an ounce of love for myself. If anything, it's just this constant need to be better than what I am right now.
So I feel like narcissism might be more of a type of cynical perspective than someone who's just really in love with themselves.
Now and then better than the people around me, and this anxiety that I'm kind of like falling behind in that race. By the way, I can't speak for everybody when we talk about narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not a clinician or anything. I just live with the disorder, and this is everything I say here is just based off of the research that I've done and me living with it, basically. It's hard to say for me, when narcissism first kind of presented, because it's like this disorder is egosyntonic, which means that
describes a thought, behavior, or feeling that feels natural, acceptable, or aligned with one's personal self-image.
I view it as normal. I view my behaviors, thoughts, and actions as normal, and then it gets really hard.
Most people do.
Hard to kind of distinguish, especially in my early years. But the first thing that I remember that was kind of more tangible was when I was 8 or 9. I was at this funeral for a family member of mine. And I just remember being really frustrated and very annoyed at everyone there because everyone was, grieving. They're crying and stuff. And I was just like thinking like, oh, these people are being so dramatic and performative because they feel like that's what they have to do, or they want the attention for themselves. They're like trying to cry and make this funeral about them. That's rude. I'm a very polite person. I don't like that kind of stuff. We were on the car ride home, and I remember what my mom said, but she said,
to be fair, like I think I would have been more disconnected as a kid actually than I am now. It's one of those things where I think there's just a degree of maybe cruelty that goes along with being a child, because like you haven't, again, as I mentioned before in the Oprah thing, like you're not raised in reality. You're raised in an artificially stabilized environment. So you kind of maybe think that the world to some extent is made for you, and there's this thing that you haven't really experienced pain on a real level or difficulty on a real level. Most of the blows have been softened, and you almost have a degree of like self-centeredness that perhaps is stripped from you as you grow older and you actually start to go through stuff, I think.
something that kind of made me be like, maybe there's a little bit more genuine, maybe I might be the odd one out here in terms of like not really the odd one out here. Maybe there's a little mom said, but she said something that kind of made me be like, maybe there's a little bit more genuine, maybe I might be the odd one out here in terms of like not really feeling that grief and being, I wasn't being performative, but I was, you know, obviously, this is why I hate funerals. I'm worried that people are going to notice that I'm not feeling crap. But like obviously I was to some degree appearing sad, so that, because that was the thing that you do at funerals. When I got into high school, a little bit before high school, I picked up on like people who were a lot more outgoing or saying funny things. People were paying attention to them. I knew I wanted that. I wanted to be the person that could like run a room and be charming and everything. And I remember I was like saying,
like, so I wonder what the difference. Like, I think there's a thing called histrionic personality disorder, which I don't know if that's in the same category or not. I don't think it would necessarily require narcissism, though. It's more just a really hyper caring what other people think about you, or like almost like a very performative type of thing.
At a lunch table, and like the entire period, like I was the center of attention, making everybody laugh. I could not tell you a single thing that was said during that period, but I remember walking away feeling elated. I felt high because of just the amount of attention and the crap that I was getting. It kind of stuck with me in that moment of, this is what.
To be fair, like, I don't know if he's unique in that regard. I think most people do get a type of euphoria off of that type of idea.
Makes me feel good, and I want to do anything I can to maintain that. The first time it was ever mentioned to me, though, was I was like 16 years old, and because of my home life wasn't great, the psychologist during that time mentioned narcissistic personality disorder, and you can get diagnosed that young, but most don't go that route. I remember he just he said something about me matching the criteria to a T or something like that. And I just didn't really care at the time because I was 16 and whatever. But it was always kind of in the back of my head after that, where I was just kind of like, maybe that's something I have, but even if I do, who cares? And if I do have it, that just makes me better than people. Yeah, I'm good at manipulating people. Yeah, I don't have emotions like the rest of you idiots. Yeah. At one point
It's like a blind man celebrating his blindness a little bit.
called it.
It is true. Like, it feels like it's hard to separate between Sometimes it's hard to separate between the notion of sensitivity and perception. They're kind of a little bit in the same category, I think.
It was so dumb. Look, it's like, I cringe like thinking about it, but at one point I was like, well, you know, narcissistic personality disorder is basically the logical conclusion of human social evolution, because in my mind I was like, oh, this is how you have to operate to get ahead. All of my life feels like an act. Everything feels like performative to some degree. Even when I'm alone, I'm just very acutely aware of how I would be perceived in any given moment. Whether it be what I say or how I'm moving, how my head's positioned sometimes. Whenever I'm thinking about something, it's like I'm imagining me describing it to somebody else and what their reactions would be to me describing it to them. How I would say it in a way that would elicit admiration. It makes everything feel very disingenuous. And like, An issue that I've had, like, since I started therapy is, like, trying to be genuinely vulnerable with people, trying to emotionally connect with people.
Well, and there's something to the notion. I feel like sometimes it only takes one person. Like, you only have to be genuine with one person. Well, I take that. You should probably try to be genuine with people, but if you're vulnerable with one person, it makes everything else a lot easier. Because you go through life, I think, especially as a kid, you go through life thinking, no one else in the universe has ever gone through what I'm going through. I am alone as I'll get out. And as a Christian, I have my own perspective on this, like having to do with sin and shame and all of that as well. But you start to talk to people and you realize, no, you're not the only person who struggles with this. No, you're not the only person who goes through things like this. And that is an incredibly valuable realization to come to, I think.
I'm sober now, but I used to, like, get really wasted just so I could try to broach that vulnerability. And even when I would do that, it didn't feel real. Like, there was always parts of it that I was modifying in order to get those self-esteem needs met, because at the end of the day, those self-esteem needs trump everything else. I literally can't be genuine because being admired is too important. The only thing that feels real beyond a benefit.
Well, there's a point to be like that. Okay, so if you're not genuine, are you really admired? Like, is it you that people are admiring? Like, you're obviously presenting a facade that the people admire, which is not the real you, which is the thing you want them to actually admire, right?
Of a doubt is when I, like, completely lose control in, like, anger or something, when I'm just, like, screaming my head off at somebody because I'm so just pissed off. It's like I view the world through second person. I view the world only through how I might be being perceived at any given time, and how to kind of maximize admiration through that. For example, if somebody's envious of me, I often view that as admiration in a way. And I become a little bit insulted if somebody's not.
That's a little bit, yeah. Not gonna lie, this seems a little bit. Well, to be fair, like, as everyone likes to be admired, so that maybe there's a little bit of intuitiveness to that, but it does feel a little bit twisted as well.
Yes, of me. The biggest myth that I kind of get frustrated by is that there's this attribution of malice to a lot of my behaviors. I'm not saying I haven't hurt people. I've hurt a lot of people in my life, and I try to own those things the best.
Well, the idea was that a motivation of I want to be admired is seen as an ignoble one, I think, and I think it's also perhaps rightly so. Like that narcissism is perhaps viewed as a little bit malicious, but maybe it's less so than perhaps it's given credit for.
That I can. But when a lot of people that you see discussing it online are like, they describe the sadism that, like, oh, they enjoy hurting you and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not motivated by that. This sounds callous, but you're not important enough for me to feel like I would enjoy hurting. At the end of the day, it's not that we're out here to, like, cause damage and hurt people for no reason. It's just that we don't have those tools.
Just like we're. It's not like we're out. Maybe he has a club going on.
That are accessible to kind of alleviate not only our own suffering, but suffering of the people around us. It's just an objective lie.
Hold on. I didn't catch that.
And hurt people for no reason. It's just that we don't have those tools that are accessible to kind of alleviate not only our own suffering, but suffering of the people around us. It's just an objective lie that narcissists can't change. People.
This might be akin to a type of moral insanity or handicap-ish. But I hate the notion of taking away people's agency like that to some extent. Like, it feels like you might have disabilities even in a moral sense, but I think you can still, like with, being fat or something like that, you can make yourself better, or you can compensate or find some different way of trying to get yourself to be moral.
With narcissistic personality disorder in treatment, it was over 50% of them went into remission. Don't get me wrong, that's low for for any mental disorder. And remission doesn't necessarily mean cured. These people probably still think like narcissists, but through treatment, they're better with vulnerability and connecting, and, like, they don't meet the symptom criteria anymore. They're more functional and everything, but it's like, okay, does that mean that they're not narcissists? Probably not. It just means that they can, they see the error of their ways to a degree, and now and through treatment, they've been able to adjust accordingly.
Well, that's a really interesting point where people, if what they're doing works, how can they see the error of their ways? Like, if what they're doing actually gets them the things they want, why would they ever change? It's only once it starts not working that it maybe causes them to rethink things, in my mind.
This is a treatable condition. Now, I want to clarify, because I feel like a lot of people, when they hear me say that, their immediate thought is, oh, that means this person that I'm close to can change. Can doesn't mean will. It's like, I always tell people, you can't have expectations of people that they're going to change for you or for anybody unless they have a vested interest in it. You have to take people for who they are. Are you comfortable with this person in your life, with the boundaries that you have, and how they treat you in that moment? If so, then fine, keep them in their life. If not, then don't. Why do I think the word narcissist has been weaponized? Maybe it's just a cool word, honestly, narcissist.
To be fair, I think everyone tries to come up with ways to discredit people. Like, if they can't discredit the arguments of the people that are opposing them, they almost have to find a way to discredit in other ways, like saying, oh, they're evil, oh, they're narcissistic, oh, they're psychopaths or something like that. It's a way of dealing with that person's perspective if they can't reconcile it or disregard it in some other way.
Some people started talking about...
And for the I'm not saying that that's not ever valid to some extent, but I feel like it's maybe a little bit of a lazy alternative to genuinely dealing with the other person's perspective or something like that.
The impact that somebody with narcissistic personality disorder had, because so many people online are constantly talking about how I was with this person, he was a narcissist, and that has weight, and that gives people an appreciation.
Well, I would maybe guess that just in a colloquial sense, narcissist just means really, really, really self-centered.
For how much they went through. But it feels like we got to kind of this tipping point where a lot of people feel like their trauma or negative experiences have to be almost validated by the fact that this person is a caricature of evil. How could I actually seek real treatment for that when that's the idea around it? And that kind of stigma has gone deep. The diagnostic criteria for NPD can be twisted so easily to just fit any arrogant person. There's a lot of things like online that we read about, they'll never admit that they're wrong. That's not a diagnostic criteria. That can apply to anybody. Don't get me wrong, I get defensive and I am always right, but no, I'm joking. But like, that's not part of the diagnostic criteria. This applies to a lot of abusive people. So it's just become a convenient catch-all because of the definition that's taken up nowadays, because of this need for people to feel like their trauma is valid.
All right, interesting video. I'll let him have the last word on that. You guys can check it out if you like. It is, How Narcissists Actually Worked, Authorized Account Insider by the Nameless Narcissist, I guess. I might see if he has an account and tag him or something like that.